Hey guys, welcome back to another Versus episode. Last video we talked about Yasuo vs Yone, and there were a few things in that one I plan to improve on or work on for this one, so I hope you guys are excited for that. Speaking of which, today's episode will be covering a rivalry as old as time, but one that I think has a lot of misconceptions about to this very day. Darius vs Garen, the two iconic juggernauts. Contrary to what their very relatable playstyles may suggest, they were released pretty far apart from each other, with Darius coming out a whole 2 years later than his Demacian counterpart. But in spite of that, there was a rather close resemblance between them because this was still around the time where Riot was making archetypal characters for each region. Even though Demacia and Noxus have fundamentally different viewpoints and ideals, both of them have a storied military history, and what better way to represent that than with two big meatheads whose shoulder pads are 3 times the size of their heads. Just like the last one, we're going to be comparing the two characters' abilities, playstyles, synergies, properties, strengths and weaknesses and such before coming to a conclusion on which one was designed better or which one is stronger. Depending on when you watch this video, whether it's on the day it came out or a year from now or so, one champion might statistically be doing better than the other, higher win rate, higher pick rate, recently buffed and nerfed, what have you. For the most part, I'm going to be looking at them conceptually since those are all bound to change, though if a certain builder's strategy has been part of their gameplay for an extended period of time, that will be taken into consideration. So Garen came out first on April 27, 2010 and quickly became the poster child for what a juggernaut is supposed to be. Straightforward. He possesses all the expected traits of his class, an overwhelming combination of both power and durability, enough to give tanks and DPS champions a run for their money. In return, he's got a linear playstyle with almost no deviation, and his greatest deficiency is that he's a short-ranged and pretty slow character. All things considered, what you see is what you get with this guy. Almost every juggernaut made during the beginning half of the first decade have the same exact design template: an empowered auto attack, a defensive or utility ability, and a heavy damaging spell, which may or may not be part of that auto attack. Garen's Q, W, and E fit those markers quite well, and juggernauts back then usually had an ultimate meant to either greatly enhance their fighting capabilities or strike down a high priority target. Champions that encompass the former would be Nasus, Trundle, Dr. Mundo, or even old Aatrox's ultimates. The latter, of course, were Garen and Darius with their infamous finishers. No, they're not executes, they're finishers. I already cleared that up in my Cho'Gath video back in April. As for Darius, he was released on May 23, 2012, a little over 2 years after Garen, and his kit is a bit more complex given the gimmicks surrounding his bleed stacks. All the same, his abilities are constructed in the same way as Garen. Main damaging tool his Q, auto attack reset his W, and utility spell his E, with the ultimate also being a finisher. The only difference is that the damage depends largely on his passive bleed stacks. Between the two, it's evident that Darius seems more appealing as there's a little more nuance in his gameplay along with a higher ceiling for impact. More often than not, Darius seemingly tends to have better carry potential than his rival. Unlike Yasuo and Yone, popular opinion has established Darius to be the clear winner. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. I think you'll find this one to be more evenly matched than you might anticipate at first. Okay, so after making the Yasuo vs Yone video, you might recall I gave them number ratings like 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10. But in hindsight, it probably shouldn't do that. The original goal is to pit the two champions against each other, so I think going forward, I'll just declare which one is the winner in each parameter, if that makes sense. I'm also making amendments to 2 of them, self and team utility, by changing them to solo and team fight, since it's definitely important to consider a champion's pressure when alone or grouped up. Their utility will be included in those categories as usual. And in case you didn't watch the first video, a brief reminder of how this is conducted. There are 8 metrics to which I'll be grading the two champions in terms of their gameplay: DPS, burst, mobility, defense, solo, teamfight, synergies, and consistency. Then I'll be spending a bit of time talking about how well their kits were designed in relation to their background in the game's lore, so let's get started. Despite the similarities in appearance and in some ways their playstyles, Garen and Darius couldn't be more different in terms of their pressure. See, if you ever played either of the two and faced off against each other, they have pretty much the same amount of kill power. How they exert that pressure is where things get tricky. Every top laner worth their salt knows when it comes to all-ins, Darius completely outclasses his rival. He is the all-in juggernaut, with much of his damage being backloaded, and it's not a surprise to see why. Hemorrhage gives him a colossal attack damage boost and allows him to apply 5 stacks on any targets that come his way. Furthermore, his Noxian Guillotine's damage doubles at maximum stacks, making it a very effective finisher. His passive and ultimate reset combination indicates he gets more and more dangerous the longer a fight drags on for, so it's clear that his DPS is quite impressive. In comparison, Garen stands little chance at coming close to Darius. It's not right to say his DPS is bad though, considering Judgment and Decisive Strike have serviceably low cooldowns. In a vacuum, he's no slouch and can more than match other juggernauts, but he doesn't quite have enough staying power to compete with the likes of Darius and Sett, whose pressure comes largely from their high auto attack damage in extended fights. As for burst, that's where the tables turn. Darius dishes out incredible damage in long drawn-out battles, but his trade combo isn't half bad either. Typically, it would come in the form of E to pull them in, auto attack while they're still stunned, then reset with crippling strike before spacing or decimate for a quick chunk of damage and heal. For the most part, if you land your E, it's a true combo, since they'll be stunned or heavily slowed for the entirety of the sequence. Only way they can escape the Q damage is if they have a dash. Unfortunately, it doesn't get that much better for him beyond that. At only 3 stacks, and especially without the damage buff from his passive, his ultimate doesn't even deal half as much damage as it could do. Garen, on the other hand, blows Darius out of the water when it comes to burst. Decisive Strike's bonus damage is almost double Crippling Strike in the late game, and also applies a 1.5 second silence. Given his bonus movement speed, hardly any champion has any escape, and it allows him to nail his target with quite a number of spins on Judgment, which, by the way, deals a quarter more bonus damage on the nearest enemy. Between the two trade combos, Garen's is definitely better due to his 2 damaging abilities having more base numbers. As for the 2 ultimates, Demacian Justice hurts way more than Noxian Guillotine on a single target. Even though Darius ult resets on targets, it requires setup to get that sweet max damage, whereas Garen ultimate can just be used to finish off any low health target. To my knowledge, given that it's true damage, Demacian Justice is a guaranteed kill on most champions under 30% max health. The specific calculation is on screen, but you get the idea. Q, then spin, then ultimate. Very strong, and assuming you do it quickly, there's almost zero counterplay because of the silence. Garen beats Darius in terms of burst. Now, mobility for these two is kind of funky, not gonna lie. If we were to exclude all non-intrinsic elements, then Garen would be the clear victor since he has a speed boost while Darius has nothing. In the grand scheme of things, neither Juggernaut will be taking home any medals in the mobility department, what with the natural weakness of their class being mobility. Thing is, Darius players religiously take Ghost instead of Teleport or even Ignite because it gives them the stick potential he so desperately lacks. If we also take into account both champions building items to supplement their underwhelming mobility, there isn't a clear determining factor for which one is exactly better. At the moment, Darius has completely forgone Stridebreaker for Trinity Force, while Garen still builds Stridebreaker, which no longer has the dash but does have the movement speed mythic bonus. And even though Ghost lasts a very long time, it's still a summoner spell, it has a long cooldown. In a normal match, Garen has about 30 to 40 ability haste, which averages to about 25% CDR. Decisive Strike gives him a 35% movement speed buff for 3.6 seconds at max rank and has a cooldown of 8 seconds, which lowers to 6 thanks to the haste. I would honestly say Garen's mobility is a little better because it's more consistent, while Darius is more committal in nature. Defense? Let's be real, it's also Garen. In my opinion, the healing on Darius Q is kind of overrated. Sure, if you land that perfect 3-man Q at low HP, that can amount to over 1,000 in the late game, which can definitely come in handy. But remember, defense factors in survivability, endurance, and durability. Because it's a combat heal, Decimate falls into the survivability category, and he does win against Garen in that case. But Garen's endurance and durability are far better. For starters, Perseverance is arguably one of the best lane sustain passives in the game, and later on he almost never needs to recall since by that point it becomes a free Warmox. The best part is that he can regenerate in neutral, in that he can simply hug his turret and heal up slowly but surely. Darius has to put himself in combat to do so, and in many cases will take more damage than he recovers. Moreover, Garen has Courage, which gives him 30 bonus armor and magic resist along with a 10% bonus to both parameters at max stacks. Makes him pretty tanky, and let's not forget the active component, 30% damage reduction and a decent shield and 60% tenacity for 3/4 of a second. If timed correctly, Garen can block a lot of damage or even crowd control. I remember watching a Vanderil clip of Garen reducing a max distance Ash Arrow from 3.5 second stun to like half a second, it was ridiculous. Basically, Garen wins 2 out of 3, so he takes defense as well. At this point, a lot of you may be scratching your head wondering why Garen won 3 in a row when just about every top laner agrees Darius is the better juggernaut of the two. I'm getting to that, we're only through half of the parameters, so keep watching. The solo aspect of this will be our first neutral headway though, as neither of the two are particularly worse than the other when it comes to handling themselves in a one-on-one. Darius naturally has better dueling power than Garen because of his passive, but at the same time Garen's high defense and strong single target burst make him a challenging foe to take down. I would go so far as to say the only people who can reliably match him in a 1v1 are skirmishers or other juggernauts, so I think I'm just gonna put them as evenly matched for this one. For team fighting, the Juggernaut subclass generally doesn't put all that much care into whether or not they're fighting alongside allies or by themselves. Being the raid boss class in League, they can just as easily 1v5 as they can 1v1, and they most certainly do. but I would argue Darius teamfights a lot better than Garen. For one, he has several abilities that can reward him more if facing multiple opponents. Noxian Might instantly applies 5 stacks through his usual means, and he can either unlock it by getting 5 stacks on a target normally, or killing a champion with his ultimate. Additionally, the healing from Decimate can stack on up to 3 champions, and Apprehend pulls in all enemies caught within range. Finally, as we've described before, Darius ult has a reset mechanic, which effectively means it can hit all 5 members of the enemy team. Garen's ultimate does pack a bigger punch, but it's only on one target. Clearly, Darius is more suited for team fighting in that regard. Synergies are sort of the same way. Juggernauts rarely synergize with other champions because their kits are designed to be self-sufficient. However, Darius does have fringe synergy with champions that love it when the enemy team is corralled tightly together. Teamfight ultimates like Malphites are a boon for any team, but because of its wide area coverage, it sometimes might be difficult to follow up attack on everyone that was knocked up. Apprehend is not only a pull, which means someone like Yasuo could ult off of it, but it stacks all of his enemies on top of each other, making it so the likes of Annie or Alistar can strike multiple targets more easily. It's not much, but compared to Garen's non-existent synergy, I'm gonna give this one to Darius too. Consistency makes up the last category, and once again it's a tie. You might argue Darius is more inconsistent than Garen because he can miss his Q, but it's an ability that can be activated whenever and is not locked behind any condition that may or may not be met at a time. Darius is a very consistent Juggernaut, that's why he's one of the most played Juggernauts in the game. Garen is also consistent because quite literally everything in his kit is either point and click or self-activated. The only thing he has to do is hit an enemy champion with Q and the rest is history. Both of them are equally susceptible to getting matchup screwed, so you can't really use that against them in this scenario. Well then, Garen won 3, Darius won 3, and the other 2 were a tie. It sounds almost too coincidental to be true, right? Almost as if I planned it that way intentionally. Allow me to get into the lore part of the video if you're still not convinced. In a narrative context, both champions represent their respective nations very accurately. Demacia portrays itself as a place of safety and defense. According to the story, the capital was founded as a refuge from sorcery after the Rune Wars and used a material known as Petricite in the construction of a lot of its infrastructure. By the way, Petricite is a white stone in the League of Legends universe that inhibits magical energy, and it's also what Sylas's chains are made out of, which he ironically uses to then cast magic. How does this translate to Garen's kit? Decisive Strike is a silence. Aside from stuns and knockups, silencing mages is pretty devastating since they depend on their abilities to do literally anything. His extreme durability with perseverance and courage attests to the protective moral compass of his kingdom. The sentiment is shared with his comrades too. Jarvan, Poppy, Xin Zhao, and Lux, to name a few, all have defensive abilities embedded in their kits. On the flip side, Noxus is a brutal and militant empire that religiously follows the idealism of only the strong surviving. They have a very Machiavellian outlook on things, that the ends justify the means, and much of their culture would be sufficiently described as a meritocracy, one where anyone could rise to power regardless of social standing, background, homeland, or wealth, if they had the skill and aptitude to do so. With a primary focus on strength, Darius' abilities carry far more potential damage output as seen by Hemorrhage and Noxian Guillotine's reset mechanic. It's evident that he places more focus on crushing his opponents through brute force, as do many of his peers, completely neglecting defense in favor of overwhelming offense like Draven and Katarina. Thematically, they both are the paragons of their culture, which makes sense because they're both generals in their respective militaries. By this point, I'm hoping you're starting to understand what I meant when I said Garen and Darius are a lot more evenly matched than you might think, in lore and gameplay alike. People tend to quickly dismiss this matchup as Darius favored because, at least in a one-on-one, Darius does beat Garen, but the qualities within Garen cannot be ignored and in many cases may be more important for his team than his rival depending on the situation. This isn't me trying to promote some kind of agenda to make Garen more popular. If you really think about it, they could not be more equal. Then again, I think that was Riot's intent from the start. They wanted to create a champion for Noxus and Demacia that bear a lot of similarities between each other, but accented by their upbringing and homeland. That being said, people enjoy Darius because he's more fun, more satisfying to play, and can approach different situations more flexibly than Garen. So while they're tied in scoring, each of the parameters have different priorities. People tend to put more stock in DPS and team fighting than they do defense, for example. So that about wraps it up for today. Having finished the script, I think this one came out a lot better, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. For the time being, if you enjoyed the video, a rating would be much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, follow me on my socials and join my Discord server if you haven't yet, and don't forget to check out my older videos if you still have time. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.